You know those incredible pictures of massive elephant herds just roaming across the African savanna? Well, today we're diving deep into a real-life conservation challenge. It's happening right now in Botswana, a country with more elephants than anywhere else. Get ready for some surprising facts and some tough questions, and maybe even some changed perspectives. We're exploring this through an article from Investor. It's titled Botswana's Controversial Elephant Hunt, Conservation Success or Cruelty. It really lays out the whole debate. So picture this, a place where elephant populations are actually thriving. But that success is leading to some unintended consequences, conflicts with people, environmental damage, and a really controversial question. Could hunting be part of the solution?
What's really fascinating about this situation is that it kind of throws a spotlight on the unforeseen consequences that can even come from successful conservation efforts. It forces us to examine how we can strike that delicate balance between protecting wildlife and addressing the needs of the people who live alongside them.
So this isn't just like a feel-good animal story.
Not exactly. We're talking about a nation grappling with a surge in its elephant population, which has brought about a whole host of new challenges. Botswana currently has around 130,000 elephants, the largest population in Africa, which on one hand is a testament to their effective conservation policies, but it's also the root of a very complex dilemma.
So wait, too many elephants. How does that even happen? I thought they were endangered.
They are in many parts of Africa, but Botswana's stringent anti-poaching measures and their habitat management have been incredibly successful. However, this success story has a flip side. Botswana's landscape is primarily desert. And with so many elephants competing for limited resources, they're increasingly coming into conflict with humans.
So it's almost like a competition for survival,
Yeah,
playing out between elephants and people.
exactly. The article highlights the struggles of farmers, like Kebafilwe Fondani and Atlamo Nsoku, whose livelihoods have been directly impacted by elephants. Imagine having your crops ravaged, your fences destroyed, even your home damaged by these massive creatures. It's not just an inconvenience, it's a threat to their very existence.
Wow, that really puts things into perspective. So it's not just about saving elephants, it's about protecting people too.
Absolutely. And then there's the environmental impact. Elephants, despite their majesty, have enormous appetites and can significantly alter their surroundings. Their uprooting of trees and consumption of vast amounts of vegetation are actually contributing to the desertification of Botswana. That's a long-term ecological problem that can impact the entire ecosystem.
It sounds like Botswana is facing quite a predicament, a conservation win. That's created this ripple effect of unintended consequences. So how do they respond to this elephant overload?
They took a step that sparked international controversy. They lifted the ban on elephant hunting.
Whoa, that's a bold move. Lifting the hunting ban. I can only imagine the uproar that caused.
It certainly did. The decision triggered immediate backlash from international conservation groups, who condemned it as cruel and counterproductive. There were even accusations of Botswana prioritizing profit over animal welfare.
So it sounds like there's a real clash of values at play here.
Absolutely. On one hand, you have these global organizations advocating for the ethical treatment of animals and arguing that hunting is inherently wrong. On the other hand, Botswana's government maintains that they have the right to manage their own wildlife resources in a way that benefits their people and their economy. In fact,
Huh.
President Masisi has been quite vocal in denouncing what he calls white interference in their conservation policies.
White interference. What does he mean by that?
Well, it's a term loaded with historical baggage. It speaks to a long-standing tension between Western conservation ideals, which are often rooted in a romantic view of nature, and the practical realities faced by African nations who are dealing with the day-to-day challenges of living alongside wildlife. Some see these external pressures as a form of neocolonialism, where outside forces attempt to dictate how a country should manage its resources, even when those resources have a direct impact on the livelihoods of its own citizens.
So how does Botswana justify the return of elephant hunting?
They argue that it's a necessary tool for managing a population that's exceeding the carrying capacity of its environment. Remember, too many elephants can lead to habitat degradation and increased competition for resources, ultimately harming the ecosystem as a whole. They also emphasize that the revenue generated from hunting permits can be channeled back into conservation programs and community development projects, providing a direct economic benefit to the people most affected by elephant overpopulation.
That makes sense. It's not like they've just opened the floodgates to uncontrolled hunting, right?
Exactly. It's a highly regulated system. They issue a limited number of hunting permits each year, focusing on older non-breeding male elements, the ones who are past their reproductive prime. The idea is that by selectively culling these individuals, they can control population growth
Cool.
without disrupting the social structure or the breeding potential of the herd.
I read in the article that some professional hunters, like Leon Kackelhofer, actually support this approach. What's their perspective?
Tacklehofer
Mhm.
and others in his field argue that targeting these older bulls can actually benefit the overall health of the elephant population. These bulls can become disruptive to the social dynamics of the herd, competing with younger males for mates and resources. Removing them, they say, allows for a more natural balance within the herd.
Okay, so there's an ecological rationale behind it, but still, the idea of hunting these magnificent creatures,
Yeah.
even in a controlled setting, is unsettling to a lot of people.
It's understandable. The ethics of trophy hunting are complex and hotly debated. Opponents argue that it's cruel and unnecessary, that it commodifies wildlife, and that it sends a dangerous message about our relationship with the natural world. It raises fundamental questions about whether we have the right to kill animals for sport, even if those animals are abundant, and even if the practice is regulated.
It sounds like there's a real tension between the pragmatic approach of the Botswana government and the ethical concerns raised by international conservation groups.
Exactly. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that conservation often involves making difficult choices, balancing competing interests, and acknowledging that there are rarely easy answers.
So how do we navigate this ethical minefield? Is there any common ground to be found?
That's where the concept of coexistence comes in. Many conservationists believe that instead of resorting to lethal methods like hunting, we should be focusing on finding ways for humans and elephants to live together more harmoniously.
That sounds lovely in theory, but is it actually realistic, given the pressures we've been discussing?
It's definitely a challenge, but there are people working on innovative solutions. The article mentions Ohit Sanawa, the founder of the Elephants Protection Society NGO, who's a strong advocate for peaceful coexistence. He believes that by understanding elephant behavior and implementing strategies to mitigate conflict, we can create a future where humans and elephants can share the land without resorting to extreme measures.
What kind of strategies are they talking about?
There's a whole range of approaches being explored, from creating buffer zones between human settlements and elephant habitats, to developing early warning systems to alert communities when elephants are approaching. Some farmers are experimenting with chili pepper fences, which elephants dislike, to deter them from raiding crops.
So instead of trying to control the elephant population through culling, we could focus on finding ways to reduce conflict and minimize the negative impacts they have on communities.
That's the goal, and it requires a shift in perspective from seeing elephants as a problem to be managed to viewing them as part of a complex ecosystem that we need to learn to live alongside.
It seems like the key is finding a balance between respecting the needs of both people and elephants. But isn't that easier said than done?
It definitely is, and it raises a crucial question that the article doesn't really delve into: the role of tourism. Botswana's thriving elephant population is a major draw for tourists, bringing in significant revenue. But can tourism be a force for good and conservation, or does it create its own set of problems?
That's a really good point. We often hear about the negative impacts of tourism, like habitat disruption and the stress it can put on wildlife. But could it also be harnessed as a tool for conservation?
It certainly has that potential. If tourism is done responsibly and sustainably, it can provide a powerful economic incentive for protecting elephants and their habitats. The money generated from ecotourism can fund anti-poaching patrols, support community development projects, and raise awareness about the importance of conservation.
So it's like a positive feedback loop. Tourists come to see the elephants, which brings in money that helps to protect the elephants, which in turn attracts more tourists.
Precisely. But the key is to avoid falling into the trap of what's called fortress conservation, where local communities are excluded from the benefits of tourism, or even displaced to create these pristine wildlife areas. Sustainable tourism needs to involve and empower local people, making sure that they have a stake in conservation efforts, and that their livelihoods are improved, not harmed, by the presence of tourists.
That makes sense. It's about finding that balance again, isn't it? Making sure that both the elephants and the people who share their land benefit from conservation efforts.
It's about recognizing that conservation isn't just about protecting animals. It's about creating a sustainable future for both people and wildlife. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of ecosystems and human societies and finding ways to live in harmony with the natural world.
Botswana's situation really highlights how complicated these issues are. There are no easy answers, no simple solutions. It requires careful consideration of multiple perspectives, scientific data, ethical concerns,
Re-
and the needs of local communities.
It's a reminder that conservation is an ongoing process, a constant negotiation between competing interests, and it's a challenge that we face, not just in Botswana, but all over the world, as human populations expand and wildlife habitats shrink.
This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about. It's clear that the future of Botswana's elephants hinges on finding a way to balance conservation with coexistence.
And it makes me wonder, what role can each of us play in supporting that balance? Even though we may not live in Botswana, our choices as consumers, travelers, and global citizens can have an impact on conservation efforts worldwide.
That's a powerful thought. It's a reminder that we're all connected, and that even small actions can make a difference.
So what do you say? Are you ready to dive deeper into this issue on your own?
I know I am. This conversation has sparked a whole new level of curiosity for me.
Then let's leave our listeners with a challenge. Explore the different sides of the debate surrounding elephant hunting, delve into the complexities of sustainable tourism, and discover the innovative ways communities around the world are finding to coexist with wildlife. We'd love to hear what you uncover on your own deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.